And the men of Ephraim said to him, "What is this you have done to us, by not calling us when you went to fight with Midian?" And they contended with him sharply. And he said to them, "What have I done as compared with you? Are the gleanings of Ephraim not better than the grape harvest of Abiezer? Elohim has given into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zereb. And what was I able to do as compared with you?" And when he said that, their rage towards him subsided. And Gideon and the 300 men who were with him came to the Jordan, passing over weary yet pursuing. And he said to the men of Succoth, "Please give loaves of bread to these men who follow me, for they are weary, and I am pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, sovereigns of Midian." But the leaders of Succoth said, "Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your army?" And Gideon said, "Because of this, when Yahweh has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, I shall tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars." And he went up from there to Penuel and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Penuel answered him, as the men of Succoth had answered him. So he spoke also to the men of Penuel, saying, "When I come back in peace, I shall break down this tower." And Zebah and Zalmunna were at Kakor, and their armies with them, about 15,000 men, all who were left of all the army of the people of the east. Now those who had fallen were 120,000 men who drew the sword. And Gideon went up by the way of those who dwell in tents, on the east of Nobah and Yobihah, and he smote the camp while the camp was at ease. And Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them, and captured the two sovereigns of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and shuttered the entire army. And Gideon son of Joash returned from battle, from the ascent of Heres, and captured a youth of the men of Succoth, and questioned him. And he wrote down for him the leaders of Succoth, and its elders, 77 men. And he came to the men of Succoth and said, "See Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your men who are weary?" And he took the elders of the city, and thorns of the wilderness, and briars. And with them he taught the men of Succoth a lesson. And he broke down the tower of Penuel, and slew the men of the city. And he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, "How were the men whom you killed at Tabor?" So they answered, "They were like you, each one looked like a son of a sovereign." And he said, "They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As Yahweh lives, if you had let them live, I would not slay you." And he said to Yether his firstborn, "Rise and slay them." But the youth would not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a youth. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, "Rise yourself and fall on us, for as a man is, so is his might." So Gideon arose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna, and took the crescent ornaments which were on their camels' necks. So the men of Israel said to Gideon, "Rule over us, both you and your son, also your son's son, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian." But Gideon said to them, "I do not rule over you, nor does my son rule over you. Yahweh rules over you." And Gideon said to them, "I have a request to make of you, that each one of you give me the ring from his spoil." For they had rings of gold, because they were Ishmaelites. And they said, "We shall certainly give them." And they spread out the garment, and each man threw into it the ring from his spoil. And the weight of the gold rings that were requested was 1,700 pieces of gold, besides the crescent ornaments, and the pendants, and purple robes which were on the sovereigns of Midian, and besides the chains that were around the necks of the camels. And Gideon made it into a shoulder garment, and put it up in his city Ophrah. And all Israel went whoring after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his house. Thus Midian was humbled before the children of Israel, and they lifted their heads no more. And the land had rest for 40 years in the days of Gideon. And Jerubbaal son of Joash went and dwelt in his own house. And Gideon had 70 sons, who were his own offspring, for he had 70 wives. And his concubine who was in Shechem also bore him a son, and he gave him the name Abimelech. And Gideon son of Joash died at a good old age, and was buried in the tomb of Joash his father, in Ophrah of the Abiezerites. And it came to be when Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel again went whoring after the Baals, and made Baal-berith their mighty one. Thus the children of Israel did not remember Yahweh their Elohim, who had delivered them from the hands of all their enemies round about, nor did they show kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, Gideon according to all the good which he did for Israel.